Welcome back to the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast. My name is Jared, and I'm here with Golden Hill Grower, and we are your hosts. Today, we are discussing what are the top 10 ish, maybe 10, minus 10, I don't know, steps to diagnosing a plant issue. This is mostly directed to personal growers, but growers, farmers in general, more than welcome to listen. Um, so we were discussing what's probably the number one skill set we can give to personal growers or just people growing for themselves or their friends or family um, to help them on their journey to becoming a fantastic, great grower who maybe one day will start their own farm. Um, and with myself being more on kind of like the marketing side of all this and trying to be a part of all these different cannabis groups, whether they're growing or whatever groups, I've noticed the most common issue people have is they make a post and they say, "Help me with my plant," and they just put a picture of their plant with usually no information, and they are wondering what's wrong. And then maybe 20 to 100 people respond with a variety of answers.
20 to 100 different
Yeah.
answers.
With, and you go through and there's very few people that actually have good advice. Um, and so that was one of the things that we were talking about is what are some steps that a grower can take to diagnosing their plant. Um, and just to give people the bad example of what can go wrong. And I like to use myself as an example because I've gone through a lot of shit to get to where I am, and I'm extremely open to learning. And so I hope you guys can learn from this. But when I first started growing, I would notice, a so-called deficiency, and thinking that the plant was actually deficient in it, I would try and supplement that with said nutrient. When in fact, you didn't realize the plant was root bound, or potentially has a toxicity in something and was locking out something else. That can be one of the most, I think, troubling issues for new growers or just personal growers in general is not factoring in plants being root bound. And so, as we move forward with this, um, is that the first step? Assessing a plant being root bound in order to properly diagnose a plant issue.
Yeah, I mean it's a very very good place to start, because I mean if your root zone isn't healthy, your plant's not healthy. Period. No matter what your practice of farming is, so if you gotta check on your root zone. So if you're just a normal bottle fed, like say you got some Roots Organics or something from
Mhm.
the hydroponic store, just organic stuff but from a bottle.
Right.
If you're just feeding that, like you'll be able to get away with a little bit smaller pot just because you're adding all this extra shit to
Right.
fertilize your plant.
But eventually that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, eventually, no matter what style you're growing in, even if it's you have to, make sure your roots have enough room to go out to what they actually need for what you're trying to get out of them.
Okay.
Leaving your in a good general way to look at it, if you're leaving a plant in a pot for more than 3 weeks at a time, you're screwing up. No matter what style really you're going in, there should be a consistent every 2 to 3.5 weeks, depending on your style of growing, that you should be consistently upgrading that pot.
Is that a good number to live by? Because it's the first time I've heard that number, but it makes a lot of sense because You can transplant a plant, and it'll fill out that pot within about a week and a half, 2 weeks, in the sense of you can actually put your hand down that you can feel roots, but it's not full.
Yeah, it's not root bound
Right,
yet, but
right.
it's like it's filling out the pot good.
Okay.
Um,
So
but
making sure that there's ample root space would be the first step
yeah,
to diagnosing a plant.
yeah, and like it's another good thing to do that I started doing a long time ago when I first started was not paying attention to the color of the stem or um, to the what like color the leaves are, how they react. What I started noticing was if you're doing too much, whether it's too much nitrogen, you get like a clawing up on your leaves, like your leaves like roll up.
Mm-hmm.
But like if it's too much of pretty much anything else, it's like you get that clawing over like the claw,
Like clawing down.
clawing down, yeah, instead
Okay.
of up. So like I noticed that was like a real easy like, oh, that's too much nitrogen, oh, that's too much phosphorus in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good like learning point for me way back in the day, and not even getting into like the colors of
Right.
stuff, leaves, to tell you what you might be um, deficient in. So just because if you're just a personal grower or something like that, some people might like to look into the problem more, but just in a general sense, don't read into it too much.
Okay. Now, we were talking about the root bound stuff being an issue, or root bound being an issue in general, but more so that you can, with some nutrients, you can just continue feeding in a smaller pot and keep growing.
Yeah.
A lot of that is because you're not relying on microbes and other soil life to actually break down nutrients. You're letting the plant do that. So, what about nutrient availability? I know with the synthetic nutrients or the salts, the nutrient companies basically doing the job of the microbes, and so you can feed the plant, and then nutrients are available instantly or relatively instantly. Whereas with using no-till, organic, soil life, soil food web, you're usually top dressing, and it usually takes time for that to break down, and then time for the plant to actually absorb what those microbes and worms have made bioavailable.
Yeah.
That takes time, and so I know it can come. It can be easy to overfeed when you don't notice your plant getting better faster. Do you think, I guess, working backwards, so from root space to, all right, you have enough root space, check. Something's still wrong with your plant. Do you think that next step should then be to assess the most frequent feedings and see if maybe something backed up there, where let's say you go 3-4 feedings back and you realize, well, yeah, you started feeding once a week and now you're feeding once every 2 days because you want to see growth, and all of a sudden
Because you're root bound.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is it not growing like it used to be?
so
Yeah.
is that the second step, or should we just flush and start from scratch?
Well, that depends on like what state the plant is at that point. Like if you just got a little bit of a deficiency, say a little bit of cow mag or something.
Let's say it's fixable. Yeah.
Something that's really easy. Like most of the time, you can just like foliar spray something to fix that. You don't even have to, because like, if you got the bigger pot now, you have plenty of root space.
Oh, and you can bypass
And
the soil.
so like so you have your soil will help, in your root zone will help in general now that it's bigger, just because your roots will be able to mine out what's there or what isn't. and will be able to uptake more of what you're giving it.
Okay.
So it should be able to just grow right out of that that problem that you initially had, which was root bound in the first place.
Right. Well, I know that. Sorry. That's one of the preferred methods, I guess, of dealing with a magnesium deficiency is instead of taking Epsom salts and feeding it directly to your soil, just foliar feed it. And I know that's a lot of people's thoughts as far as the soil food web is they can feed their soil, keep that alive, and at the same time they're foliar. In this way it's not jamming up their soil with nutrients, but instead they almost split it. And so the things that are best foliared and I guess can be seen most instantaneously, like doing like a dehydrated fish or whatever it's called, like a dehydrated fish to it, or foliaring that, or even the what do they call it, like an amino product, like a plant protein, something that you can see probably the next day. Yeah. I think that would be a better approach than
trying to fix the problem through the roots.
Right.
Just because if you fix the problem with the roots just by upgrading to a bigger pot, now it can search out more nutrients that you're giving it, and it can fix its problem on its own from there. And as long as you haven't gave it some crazy high dose in the smaller pot in its previous stage, you should be fine.
Do you think that just like people have like a lead foot, people with like heavy feeders, do you think splitting up their desire to feed more, should they split that up between half to the soil, half foliar, or just to give your soil a break almost, and I feel like eventually you'll still get some issue on the leaves, you'll still get some sort of burn because you're still heavily applying things, but
it's really less is more. Like that's and growing less, a lot of less is more, and just being consistent is huge. So like don't be feeding one crazy concoction or whatever you gave it this, and then like be jumping around constantly, different pH ranges and stuff like that. Everything should be consistent. Give it the same feeding, and then plan on every so often, well, maybe give a little bit more this or a little bit more that, but don't let's scrap that plan and go to a plan B and try this and try that.
Actually, we were talking, okay, so a while back we were talking about almost like the issue that happens when people that normally use salts or synthetic nutrients, when they try and incorporate organic nutrients or organic like compost teas into their method of cultivation, and nothing happens. Is that something that people need to be thinking about? Again, I know that switching over from synthetics to organics is a process. It's usually not something that happens all at once, and so there are going to be people that are transitioning, and they're not going to, they're going to, like, I've only used these synthetic stuff and this has worked for me. All of a sudden I wanted to use some compost teas, and now there's deficiencies. Do you think that's going to be an issue for a lot of growers? Is that something they need to look at when assessing their plant? Am I mixing synthetics and organics, and where is that creating a problem as far as what's available, and are my microbes in these organics or whatever product, is it actually able to survive in the synthetic realm that's been created in the soil? Do people need to look at that, or I mean, it sounds like obviously.
Yeah, that's obvious. But really, you shouldn't be adding anything you don't understand.
Well, and I guess this more goes into the process, because I know in some of these groups there's a lot of people that, you know, they started out in illegal states, and all they know is, you know, these synthetics work, and this is what the hydro shop pushes, and so this is what they sell me, and this is what it works. But they want to start incorporating organics, and so all of a sudden, so-called good growers end up having organic problems because they start mixing things. And I guess that's where I was getting at with the diagnosing the plant issue is, you know, I know what it's like to know something and then to transition, because that's what I was doing, you know, these past 2 years, 3 years, was transitioning from organic bottles to full no-till, and having to see your plants go from good plants back in the day to shitty plants because you're mixing ideas and mixing philosophies, and then back to good plants again. Is that like step 3? Assessing if you're mixing synthetics and organics.
Assessing your role.
Yeah,
in the whole process.
I guess that's a better way of describing it. Yeah. Should you be assessing your role in the plant's development, opposed to assessing just the plant?
Yeah, you should always be assessing yourself. That's definitely like a good third rule.
It should
because if like with compost, like say you've been feeding all these bottles of Fox Farm the whole time, like a lot of those things you can be fine with mixing in a compost tea, but like you just need to understand what a compost tea is and what it does to the plant and to the soil. Because once you understand that, then you'll understand that like why the problem had happened. Yeah, so like if you understand compost teas, you'll know why it had messed up what you did before, because you understand that process. And but in general terms though, there's a lot of bottles out there. If you mix in compost teas with those feedings, you're only going to be improving it, because a lot of those bottles just have a lot of like, it's just like a tea of like bat guano and different stuff all mixed together. So there's life there. It's just like a synthetic
environment.
It's like a really run down milkshake.
Oh,
that
right,
you
right.
don't want to drink compared to something really good, you know.
Okay. So if they've got their root zone checked, they're not heavy feeding.
They're staying regular.
And they're staying regular, and they're incorporating themselves properly into the way that they cultivate, so that the plant theoretically should be getting everything that it's getting.
Yeah.
I would feel like the next step is like...
Should that step be called like know your role?
The assess yourself? I think so, yeah. Because I'm trying to write them down right now as we're moving along, this way that we can actually define them further. So the know your role, because that's even more important. Know how you're actually...
Yeah. If you're wanting to,
how you fit in.
Yeah. Are you wanting... There's different... Everybody has a different life, so maybe it's easier for you to... You have a smaller space to have smaller buckets or plants,
smaller plants,
and stuff. So you could buy some Fox Farm and use that, and great. Like
you just can't grow giant plants for the space you're in.
Yeah, and you just like
okay.
In general, that stuff's gonna work just fine for like normal people. But the biggest thing with all that stuff is like the reason no-till is so great is because you don't have to flush, because you're putting nature in there. You're not, you know, you're not putting this foreign substance into the soil that's not usually been there, and then the plant's uptaking it. So you like the biggest thing. I think wouldn't be flushing be like pretty much the last.
Flushing, I think, would be the very last step if, you know, as far as assessing and fixing it. But I was. It's funny because you were talking about Fox Farm, and that reminded me. I told you plenty of times I've never had a good experience with Fox Farm ever. But I don't know, they might be the number one selling soil, right? Quite possibly, yeah. I mean, everybody
even
uses
back
them.
in the day, their bottle line sold like crazy.
Yeah.
Everybody, like tons of people around here in Southern Oregon use Fox Farm.
And
still do.
Well, and it's so I think there's two issues to that, and that would be, I'm like going back. Okay, so your root zone's fine. You're not heavy feeding. You know your role, as in you've transplanted on time. So let's say that you transplanted into maybe some hot soil, and maybe it's not your fault, or maybe your soil was dry when you transplanted and you watered after instead of before, and so when you put your plant into dry soil, you're basically like the nutrient to, I guess, moisture content was off, and so it's almost like being dehydrated with salts around you, opposed to having a nice comfortable sea to live in, or soil web to reside in. And so by doing so, you've exposed your bare roots to a somewhat inhospitable environment, and maybe that shocked it to the point where now things aren't available. I would feel like your next step would almost be to check the actual soil that it's in. Now, before flushing, I've heard of people just ripping their plant out of the soil, washing their roots off like in water, and then putting it in different soil.
Yeah, you could do that.
It seems like I don't know what would come first, flushing or that. It seems like that's extreme, but at the same time,
I wouldn't. Yeah.
It's root pruning, though.
Yeah.
Theoretically,
yeah. Theoretically, you wouldn't have to do it that harsh. You could do you could pull it out of the pot and literally just chop the root zone in half, and then go over to your and then just kind of shake most of the dirt off that top half.
Right.
And then you could just go to your new pot and plant it, or you could just leave it in the pot it is and just plan on just giving it water, because it's just really hot, and a lot of that nutrients, there's not a lot there is a lot of nutrients in Fox Farm bag soil, but there's not enough there to continually burn the plant for 30 days. And there's enough there for maybe a week at most. So you can easily just give it water for 2 or 3 weeks, and it'll grow through that with Fox Farm. I know that for a fact, just because it's hot, but it's not that hot.
So I guess after that, then, after checking for hot soil, the only thing you can do would be to flush, or is there some other step that could be taken?
Yeah, and really,
I'm
you
not
wouldn't
sure.
really be
flushing
the plant root zone.
No, you're just
just
feeding water. So you're allowing the plant to cycle through its emotions right now, if you will.
Because when it's shocked too, it's not taking up nutrients very well, if
Right.
that at all. So there's no sense of trying to
Add anything to it.
add anything to it. So just it's gonna be dormant for a couple weeks no matter what.
Oh yeah.
So the best thing you could do at that point is just water and spray it, the whole plant down, mist it down with water every day, because that'll help. It almost breathes through its skin too. So if you spraying water over it, it'll help cleanse all that stuff out.
Interesting. So it's like a clean foliar feed almost.
It's like taking a shower every day. Yeah. Clean yourself up. That's the way I look at it.
Interesting. So we've narrowed 10 steps down to 5. I like that. I think that's pretty good. So just to go back over, the first thing you should probably do, if you've got a plant issue, to double check your root zone, make sure that your plant does not need to be transplanted. And if so, probably transplant it and let it do its thing.
Yeah, there's that 2 to 3 week rule.
Yeah.
You should be transplanting.
Yeah, you can call it the golden rule, actually. From Golden Hill Grower. Oh, he likes that. So the golden rule, aka from Golden Hill Grower, is
Every 2 to 3 weeks, be transplanting.
okay. So you've transplanted, your root zone's good. The next thing would be to assess your the frequency of your feeding. Are you heavy feeding? Sometimes it's better to do light feedings and do that more frequently instead of just trying to feed all at once and almost the plant getting full, like a full stomach and just
Yeah.
it backed up. So if you haven't been heavy feeding, um, then it's know your role and assess what your job is in the overall cultivation methodology that you've decided to use, and see, is the plant messing up because you aren't supplying, the right nutrients, or maybe you aren't making them available, um, or maybe you are mixing synthetics and organics and kind of screwing up everything that each one is supposed to do. Again, the job of a synthetic nutrient or nutrient companies in general, are to do the job of microbes and to put that product into a bottle that makes it easy for you to use. The microbes' job is to do that for you. And so you kind of create an environment where microbes are just like, well, what the fuck am I doing here? I can't live here. I'm not supposed to be here. I guess I'll just die. And yeah, who knows what happens. After that, check your soil. Like, actually check it. Make sure that it's not something that, either A, it's brand new soil. Make sure you didn't just transplant into it. If you did transplant into it, or you're about to transplant into something and you just want to make sure that you don't have a plant issue, water it first. Make sure it's not dry. Make sure it wasn't dry when he transplanted into it. And we're also talking about not just the nutrient density as far as it being hot, but the actual temperature of the soil. Make sure the actual temperature of the soil isn't like 2 billion degrees. That will also burn everything. And I guess at the very end, if your root zone's good, you're not heavy feeding, you know what you're supposed to be doing. It's not hot soil, and actually, it's funny. I think we should have brought this up. While you're, I guess, flushing, but in reality, you're not flushing. You're just feeding water. Still the same frequency, just feed water, and or give it water and foliar water, but pesticides or pest issues. I'm sorry, not pesticides. Some of these mites can cause some issues where your plant just starts acting up. I know people have seen that outdoors. It seems a lot more. Where was it? Those some different mites will just cause your plant to look funny, look strange, and stop growing, or the growth itself will start coming out all whorled, or like in a circle, or will start rolling in on itself. Or it'll look glossy, almost like it's wet or like covered in wax. Check your IPM, or your integrated pest management program. If you don't have that, it's, well, you want to explain that? I feel like that's your specialty. Tell them what IPM is, and tell them why. I mean, obviously they know why. I mean,
Yeah, I guess it is should be a big step.
Yeah.
That you should be doing always. Well, not always, but until flower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sick plants.
Yeah, it's very important to spray when your plants are sick. Like I said before, with like the flushing, just spraying the water on the plant will help cycle all that junk out of its system, and so just spraying your plant will just water will disturb a lot of pests And if you do it every day, uh, you know, I would say 70% of all your bugs, like bad ones that are going to harm stuff, they're not going to hang around. You have to have some really sick plants. Like you had to really been root bound and your plant's very sick, to have achieved these different russet mites and broad mites or spider mites. All those mites make the plant look different and make it look weird because they literally make they're sucking it dry from the inside out in a way. So
Yeah, I know some of those mites, they don't. Some of them they live on the leaf, some live under, and some live within the actual tissue. You know,
Yeah.
they lay their eggs in the tissue,
yeah,
and
they're microscopic.
yeah,
Can't yeah.
or they live in the soil and they're attacking the roots. And
Well, if you have any of those, it's both. Like
yeah,
they're as much on your plant as they are in your soil. That's why it's important to have a healthy soil system.
so making sure that you've been keeping your pests in check with, for lack of a better word, the proper pesticides, or the proper pesticides, whether it's just water that you're using as a pesticide, or it's um, essential oil sprays or soap sprays or cayenne pepper or whatever you want to use, neem oil, making sure that that's been applied and that pests aren't another factor potentially contributing to your plant. I guess that needs to be, you need to make that step 6. I guess you can be doing that along with flushing, but at the same time it's
Needs to be like step 6 and 1.
yeah.
Like, it needs to be a step within all those steps.
I agree. I almost feel like it could be step 1 just to isolate that.
Yeah, you need to, everybody who's growing, whether you're just growing small time or big time, IPM should be one of your biggest focuses the entire time, because if the bugs will screw things up in a way that you can't understand and you think is a different problem. So IPM is very important just to keep the plant clean, keep lots of water on it, healthy stuff. It'll keep it way more vigorous, and keep the bugs away.
Okay, so we've got, so IPM has been, so is the first thing you check, then your root zone, then your feeding, then yourself, then your soil, then you just start feeding water as a general cleansing, if you will, for everything. And I guess that's more of a remedy opposed to a step to diagnosing. It's more just something where, okay, you've checked, the top 5, start doing this, then go back to your IPM, double check that, make sure that's good. Would there be any other reason? I mean, at this point, I feel like the issues could be environmental, and that should be the next thing, is light, VPD, your humidity. Is your environment allowing things like PM or mold or other things to thrive? And so instead of you treating this or that, you're treating the symptoms opposed to the problem. Is the environment, I guess, what are we on, step 7 or 8, or maybe we are going to 10? Oh
Maybe.
shit, maybe
No,
okay.
Yeah, your environment is huge. If you're trying to grow a bunch of plants in a junkyard,
That junkyard weed, that junkyard dog.
yeah, you could get away with it, but you're definitely going to have more issues compared to, like, say if you're growing outdoor, say somebody's, nice green grass,
Right,
like in their yard, you're going to have way less pest issues. So just knowing your environment, making sure you're clean.
Okay. That's definitely a big issue. I know, like, we're talking
'Cause,
about
yeah, clean goes to from pests to mold to just your
everything.
your herbs in general getting dust all over them,
Mm-hmm.
like dirt and
The
everything.
environment, it's such an overlooked factor. I know everybody just wants to grow, and I've seen some rough grows out here. Just driving by, and you're just, oh my god,
Yep.
no wonder they've got all these issues. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's see. If the environment's good,
Yeah.
then is it the plant itself?
Yeah.
Are some plants just funky like
I
that?
mean,
Or is it the first time they're seeing growth? Is it, like, what? I mean, I'm just going through,
yeah.
like,
Well, to me, like if you went over all these steps that we
and yeah, and
told you,
you've checked it
like
all
this is
off.
gonna be like, at least 3 weeks.
It's just, yeah, funky genetics.
So like if you done something for 3 weeks of like keeping things normal in check, you're just watering, you have plenty of root space, you know that it's not like your whole thing, your roots aren't bound to that
Mm-hmm.
thing, you
Yeah, the
can,
pot, yeah.
um, and you've done this for 3 weeks and you've been spraying, um, you should have growth. And if you don't have growth at that point in time, you're just wasting your time. Like, just cut down, restart. You screwed up somewhere that like you don't understand or you didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've done it. Everybody does it
Mm-hmm.
until you get further in next time, and then you go, oh, and then you can correlate between when you
Right.
screwed up and you didn't.
So, so you've checked everything off then.
Yeah. You
Hmm.
checked everything off. You've done all your pests. You make sure you have plenty of roots. There wasn't, if you did overfeed, you've watered for like 2 weeks straight. It should have had flushed out easily all the nutrients that was there,
Mhm.
or at least enough of it to allow the plant to have steady growth again. You've checked your environment. There's not a bunch of old trays or junks or
Mhm.
just what have you laying around. You're clean. You tidied up everything. You should be growing good. And if you're not, I would say that plant is just either sick because you got a clone from your buddy that clone wasn't very well taken care of.
It was like taken from a sick plant, from
Yeah,
a sick
and
plant,
maybe
from a
it
sick
sat
plant.
in his fucking living room for like 2 weeks without any light or something, and just like just destroyed the actual integrity of the plant. And so when you got it, say it was you did all your best, but it didn't go. Like,
Crazy. It's almost like the will to live.
yeah,
Like like over time, it just there's you've given it everything, but there's no reason for it to live when you don't give it whatever or whatever's the person before you gave it.
yeah. So there's a lot. There's some things that, especially if you're doing clones from other people or you're getting seed starts from other people, there's a lot in play there that you don't have any control over.
Mm.
And so like it's good to make sure you kind of know where your clones are coming from and stuff.
So this is what you would do. This
Yeah,
is
I
what
would-
we are doing.
Yeah, I would chop it down because at that point you've wasted almost a month of your time on something that's not returning anything to you, but you've taken the necessary steps. So chop it down, go find some good clones or some good seeds and start over, because you'll save so much more time and money trying to just starting over faster instead of trying to prolong that sick plant forever and ever, and then you try to flower it out and then it'll probably hermy because it's been sick forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have complications of flower too, almost. I can guarantee it.
Right. So damn. So okay, it's almost, actually, I think that is about 10 steps or so. So to go in reverse, so that people don't have to diagnose a plant issue and chop it and waste their time. First, check the plant and make sure that the plant that they're about to grow is a solid plant, comes from stable genetics, or the clone itself is healthy, or the seed is healthy, and it's been selected, and it's not the runt.
Yeah, don't take a clone from a shop that's been sitting there like, oh, we got these extras, you know.
Yeah, the extras
they're
are rough.
they're 15% on sale. Don't take those unless you're an experienced grower and you know what the fuck you're doing.
It's going to take time to bring it back. So the second thing, so that you don't waste your time, is to double check your environment. Make sure your plant's got enough light. Make sure if you're at the level of understanding VPD, or the vapor pressure deficit, and its role in the overall environment and its use as a metric for understanding kind of what's going on in the plant. Make sure that's good. Make sure your environment doesn't allow things like mold and powdery mildew to grow. Check your IPM and make sure that you have an IPM program. Again, that's your integrated pest management. That's preventing disease and pests, opposed to fighting them when you see them. Check your soil and know whether or not there are nutrients in it or not, and know whether or not you need to be just feeding water, or if you need to be feeding something that has nutrients in it. Knowing your role in how you're going to grow will help you get there. Understand, again, if you're supposed to just be adding water, or if you're supposed to be almost playing God and adding every little thing. Knowing when it's time to, if you need to add something like CalMag, add CalMag. Or if your role requires you to be adding things like eggshells and oyster shell or gypsum or something else for your calcium. Know what to do and how to do it. Make sure you're not heavy feeding, and that you allow the plant to grow at the rate it grows. I am very guilty of pushing shit as far as it will allow me. I am a firm believer in pushing everything to the limit. But at the same time, I also get burned by the sun. So if you're going to do that, be aware of the risks. But at the same time, just know that there may be an issue there. Double check your root zone and know whether or not you need to be transplanting. What's the golden rule, man?
Every 2 to 3 weeks.
Cool. So make sure you guys transplant every 2 to 3 weeks, or at least begin flowering by that time. But ideally, allow yourself 2 to 3 weeks before doing so. And then do IPM again. Make sure everything's sprayed, and even going into that, because that is the first and the last, essentially, on regarding this. I kind of want to go into it just because we got a little time, and I feel like this will be good for them. There are different the different reasons that some products work, and why some growers like Golden Hill Grower can use things like water to get rid of pest problems, while other people, I've seen these guys come into the stores where they've got warehouses full of plants and have bought everything under the sun and under the warehouse lights to fix it, and nothing works. They can't fix this, they can't fix that. A lot of it has to do with how frequent they're doing it. Some people are expecting, or they want the problem to be fixed now, but they aren't prepared for, well, the issues that the plant may go through. You know, when something is that aggressive, you're going to have some potential issues coming from the plant. You might burn it. Can you explain why you choose to use things like water and, I guess, softer, quote-unquote, pesticides, but not even essential oils, herbal sprays, stuff like that, why you choose to use that, and why your method works opposed to using some of these other super expensive, almost like targeted pesticides where they're specific for this pest and this pest and this pest. Why is what you do better than what others do, or why does it work for you?
It works better for me.
Yeah, because it doesn't work for everybody, man. Like I've talked to that, and some people, they just don't have the dedication.
Well, yeah, and a lot of those people overlook other problems too that are causing that main problem.
Okay.
But for me, it's one big reason I do IPM this way is because it's cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
much cheaper. I could never hardly afford any type of bug spray. If I did, it was like once a year, so it wasn't like I had access to actual like mite type sprays.
So it came out of necessity.
Yeah, and so it was like, well, obviously, if you have spider mites, like you should be probably spraying your plants and like making sure they're not root bound, because like when plants get root bound, they're getting sick in a way, you could say. So like they call bugs to it to devour it to make so it'll die,
Okay.
because the plant's like, I have no more room to grow, I can't grow no more, so it's gonna call these bugs. So if you're root bound and you have bug problems, that's why. So I found with just spraying all the time, whether even it was just like warm to hot water, it got rid of all these pests, because all these pests work in cycles of like weeks. So if you sprayed your plants and like made it to where made the bugs environment inhospitable to where they're just constantly getting drowned with water and stuff, because they breathe through their skin, they're gonna leave. It's like, like I like to say, like imagine if you were in your house but somebody was spraying you with a hose the entire time.
Oh my God.
You'd be like, I'm fucking out of here. I'm not living at this house no more. No more.
Huh.
So that's the way I looked at it, and it worked for me. And like I know it works in many other occasions, but you have to factor in your root zone, because if you're root bound and you're just trying to feed it more and more of some type of synthetic nutrient, you're not fixing that initial root bound problem that's calling the bugs to it. So you need to fix your root zone, whether it's, okay, I don't want to transplant to bigger pots, so let me take it out, root prune it, and put it back. Like, fix the root bound problem. I'm not saying upgrade to necessarily a bigger pot,
Right.
but being root bound will call bugs to it, because that's the natural response of the plant to die, because it has no more room to grow, because plants get their nutrients from their roots.
Right.
Mainly.
Right. So, is this, one of the things that you've always told me is making sure that your plant essentially is clean before flowering.
Yeah.
And for you, you've got a spray schedule that's a little intense for
Most people can't.
and they definitely don't want to.
No. But
Do you feel comfortable explaining that, or is
Yeah.
that something you want to tell people?
no, I don't care.
Okay, so
like-
what's your schedule, man?
I'll spray every day, sometimes multiple times per day, for a month, just because if you spray for that long, your beneficial stuff, I should say,
Mhm.
there ain't gonna be nothing there, because if you're spraying with stuff like that, it's going to kill the bugs that's there, or annoy them so much that they leave and lay eggs somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
By that time, you've been spraying for a month, so if you're like bugs work in cycles of like weeks. So like you'll have like some spider mites on your leaves, and then they'll lay eggs, but those eggs won't hatch for like a week or a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So like say you sprayed for a week, and you're like, oh good, my plant looks better. I don't see very many signs of them anymore. Like it's doing better. But then a week later, you say you quit spraying because you thought they were gone, or to the point where you could get away with it. A week later, all those babies are gonna hatch, and and while those babies were sitting there, they're making more. So like every day, they're planting more and more seeds, whether it's on the plant or in the soil.
Damn.
So if you're not doing it every day, they're winning that battle. But if you're consistent like throughout a week, and you did it throughout a week, bam, you just took care of the ones on the plant, because they're gonna leave. So like this is how I did
Yeah,
it. Like,
yeah.
so I sprayed it, so like for a week the ones on the plant pretty much were gone. The new ones hatch, those ones come up, I spray those ones, they can't live there, they're gone. And then I just take care of the cycles until they're gone, and then they can't live there, and then there's no more eggs to be hatched.
So you're basically wiping them out, like
I
generationally.
I won the war. Like they put up this battle, and I said it don't matter. Like you have to win the war. The bugs are in it for life to death. If you're not willing to go that far, you'll never. You have to. There's that yin and yang to everything.
They are,
and
aren't they?
You can't get away with just spraying pesticides once or twice here or there. That'll kill the initial bugs, but like I just said, they hatch in weeks. So the next week later, you're gonna sprout up some more. So you have to like strap your boots on and get ready for the battle for a whole month.
Wow.
Of spraying, and I had to do this. You guys think you have? I had to do this for 6+ years. Spraying almost daily to twice a day consistently, because I had to learn all that. And and I'm crazy, and I take in plants with bugs on them. So like
always playing catch up.
But if you spray for 6 years straight every day, like spraying again,
you'll get there.
Like no big fucking deal. You're like, oh, spraying, that's okay. Just spraying some more water.
That's funny.
And see, that's the thing. Like, I'm not spraying anything harsh. I'm spraying water with maybe some essential oils, or just very simple stuff.
Light stuff. Wow.
Nothing you can. I spray it in my eyes. It doesn't hurt me. Like, you could drink it if you wanted to. Like,
don't do it.
Don't do it. But I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
it's not harmful to us.
That's good, man. You've got a super intense IPM method, man. I love that shit because it's by far it allows you to.
I've talked to even big time growers, and I've asked them, and they're like, it's impossible. And I was like, well, I know this is my way, because like, and there ain't nobody else doing it.
Well, see, okay, it's funny. Like I was thinking about this, back to this one dude that I specifically met at the store that I talked to about this. And he's the guy that's got a big old warehouse, multiple rooms, and the only thing I could think of was that I don't know if they were spraying everything every single day. Like if they sprayed the entire warehouse at once, like all in the same day, or if it was like, we have other duties, so we'll get to this room one day, we'll get to the next room one day, we'll get to the next room one day.
And I can guarantee you
and that's one of the issues.
Imagine having a warehouse full of plants and they're all infected, and you're like,
you have to spray.
Or you have one room maybe halfway decent clean, and you're like, okay, how do we combat all this? Because you literally cannot spray every plant every day.
And that's the problem, is if you're not doing that, then you're basically, and I mean, to the entire property, to the entire warehouse, all the same day, every single day. I would almost say almost at the same time, to prevent cross-contamination, or making sure that you're swapping clothes or this, that, the other. I mean, you're almost preventing your success.
Yeah, I think that's
crazy.
Where it jumps back a rule too, where it's like chopping it down.
Yeah,
Like if you sprayed for 30 days whether it's just water or not, and you've warded off all those
You still
new
got problems.
hatchlings,
Mm-hmm.
like you've put in the work. Like you you sprayed every day, sometimes twice a day for 30 days. You're like, yeah, like
Yeah.
you'll either want to do it more for some reason, or you'll probably just be like, okay, it's easier just to chop this
Start
and
fresh.
start over.
Now, one of the things that I've personally learned is sometimes you need smaller plants to manage your grow a little bit better. If you get in the weeds, as they say, I don't know who's been in the retail industry, but you get caught in the weeds and shit's just coming at you. Sometimes it's better to just chop all your plants in half. This way you literally have half the bullshit to deal with, and then respray. Or before you spray, chop everything out. Chop all the inner shit, clean all that stuff up. Spray, make it much more manageable. Make sure that there's less places for pests to actually live. But as Golden Hill Growers taught me, if you're going to top dress those plants or the foliage, everything that you chopped off, or if you're going to bring those outside, or if you're going to transport those from one place to another to your compost or whatever, factor in that all those have those mites on there. So if you're going to do it,
Yeah.
spray your soil.
Get rid of those. Put them in garbage bags.
yeah.
Like take them to the dump. Like
Burn it. Yeah.
Take them off your burn them. Do it something. Get rid of those. Like make sure you washed all your clothes really well, because if you're trying to eliminate the problem to keep it away, you have to take it up that extra notch,
Mhm.
because you have to be clean. You have to be everything. You have to
Super.
be better than nature.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough, man. Well, I think so far we've covered just about everything. Yeah. Okay. Great, man. Thanks for your help, man. So one of the things that we actually just did was decide to offer a few different coupons, different codes and whatnot that people can put into our website if they decide they like listening to this, they want to try some of the product we're selling, or if they just want a good deal on some seeds or flour because they grow themselves or they partake. On our website, howtostartacannabisfarm.com, we've got a code to get buy 1/8, get 1/8 for free. The code is 2418, the letter T and the letter H. So that's 2 for 1/8. If you don't quite have that much money, which again I think an eighth right now is running about $30 or so. Say you got a couple, you just want a couple grams, not a problem. We got you. Buy 2 grams, get 1 free, but really we'll give you 1.5. So buy 2 grams, get an eighth. The code is 342 grams, GRAMS, and all these letters are in capitals. So on the 2 for 1/8, it's a capital T, capital H. On the grams, it's capital everything. If you like us so much and you feel like spending about $100 with us, we will give you 33% off. So it'll save like $33. So a $100 purchase gets it to you at about $77. If you like us even more and you want to spend $200 with us, we'll give you $50 off. So yeah, ballers. Yeah, no shit. So spend $200. Basically, you get it for $150. The codes for each is 50 off 200 and 33 off 100. Again, off, capital O, capital F, capital F. And the numbers are all numbers. And for the growers out there, we got you guys covered. We are doing 20% off our cherry box seeds, special sauce seeds, sister seeds, and ACDC Auto 2 seeds. These are not the F2s that we just made. These are all the F1s and crosses that were originally made by Murphy Hemp Company, and or sourced by him, with them, I should say. So for the 20% off cherry box, it's 20 off CB, capital C, capital B, just like cherry box. 20 off SS for special sauce. 20 off ACDC for the ACDC Auto 2, and 20 off Sisters for Sisters Cultivar. And all of these will be hopefully linked somewhere, written down somewhere, and make it easier to find.
You say these will be available on the site, right?
I don't know. We can probably put them up there. I haven't done that yet. Might want to do that.
Yeah.
Make it easy for people. All right, we'll figure it out. We'll put it
They can just
like a coupon page.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. We could do that. Haven't thought about that. All right, we'll figure some shit out. It'll be up. You'll find it, I'm sure. Hopefully you've listened this long. If so, thank you for listening to the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast. We'll be back next time.